I can't do this anymore. 29-year-old Zoe Okonkwo whispered those words into her phone in the parking lot of a Chicago steakhouse, her breath fogging in the November cold. Navy peacoat buttoned tight, mascara starting to run, and a rage building in her chest that she'd suppressed for far too long. She was supposed to be inside having drinks with her ex-fiancé Andy, the same Andy who'd called off their wedding 6 weeks before the ceremony. The same Andy her father insisted deserved an explanation for why Zoe had blocked his number. Her best friend Jasmine texted back, "Girl, leave. You don't owe him anything." But Zoe did what she'd been trained to do since childhood. She honored her father's wishes. She walked back into that restaurant, sat down across from a man who'd humiliated her in front of 200 guests, and tried to keep her composure. But someone else in that restaurant was paying attention. A Chinese-American attorney named Wei Chen, sitting at the bar with a Manhattan and a stack of contracts he couldn't focus on. And when he saw Andy lean across the table and hiss something that made Zoe's face go pale, Wei stopped pretending to work. What happened next would force Zoe to choose between her father's legacy and her own liberation. But to understand how she ended up in that booth, we need to go back 4 weeks to the family dinner that set everything in motion. 4 weeks earlier, Zoe sat at her father's mahogany dining table in their Bronzeville home, pushing jollof rice around her plate, while her father, Mr. Kevin Okonkwo, held court. Her younger sister Emma was there with her husband, their toddler asleep upstairs. Her 2 brothers had called in via FaceTime from Atlanta and D.C. Family dinner. Mandatory, non-negotiable. "Zoe," her father said in that rumbling voice that commanded boardrooms and silenced arguments, "we need to discuss Andy." Zoe set down her fork carefully. "There's nothing to discuss, Dad." "He came to see me at the office," Kevin continued, as if she hadn't spoken. "He wants to make amends, says he panicked about the wedding, about the commitment, says he's ready now." The silence that followed was deafening. Zoe looked around the table. Her sister avoided her eyes. Her brothers suddenly found their phones fascinating. "He left me at the altar, Dad." Well, 6 weeks before the altar, but same result. 200 guests, deposits we couldn't get back. "And I paid those deposits," Kevin said quietly. "Over $60,000. You know what Andy's father told me when we first arranged for you two to meet. He said our families would build something together. Legacy." There it was, the real issue. This wasn't about Zoe's heartbreak or Andy's betrayal. It was about Mr. Kevin Okonkwo's relationship with Judge Lawrence Morrison, Andy's father. Business connections in Chicago's black elite, political alliances, community standing. "I'm not marrying someone to preserve a business relationship," Zoe said, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "You're 29 years old," her father replied. "You've dated how many men who weren't serious? That tech guy who moved to San Francisco, that musician who couldn't hold down a job, that professor who was still married. Dad, that's not fair." "Andy has a good career, federal prosecutor, respect in the community. He made a mistake, yes, but he's willing to own it. How many men do you think will come with those qualifications at your age?" At your age, the words landed like a slap. Zoe was the director of community development for one of Chicago's largest nonprofits. She had a master's degree from Northwestern. She owned her own condo in Hyde Park. And yet, at this table, in this house, she was still just the unmarried daughter disappointing her father. "One dinner," Kevin said. "That's all I'm asking. Hear him out properly. Let him apologize face to face. You owe him that much, don't you think? You owe him, the language of obligation wrapped in the language of dignity." By the time Zoe left her father's house that night, she was exhausted from defending her decision, exhausted from managing her father's expectations, exhausted from wondering if maybe she was being too harsh, too proud, too unwilling to forgive. So she agreed, one dinner at Gibson's Bar and Steakhouse, Thursday at 7 p.m., just to end the conversation, just to make her father stop looking at her with that particular blend of disappointment and concern. The day of the dinner, Zoe's hands shook as she applied her makeup. She chose a cream turtleneck and black slouches, professional, neutral, the kind of outfit that said, "I'm here out of courtesy, not romance." She drove herself, parking 3 blocks away just to have an escape route. Andy was already there when she arrived, looking exactly as she remembered, handsome in that polished way that photographed well at charity galas. He stood when she approached the booth, that politician's smile firmly in place. "Zoe, you look beautiful." She slid into the booth without responding. A server appeared immediately and Andy ordered for both of them, the way he always did, as if he'd forgotten she'd told him 100 times she could speak for herself. "I appreciate you meeting me," Andy began. "I know the last few months have been difficult." Difficult? He'd called off our wedding via text while I was at a work conference in D.C. I'd learned about it in a hotel bathroom at 11 p.m., too shocked to even cry. "I've been doing a lot of reflection," Andy continued. "Therapy, actually, working through my commitment issues, and I realized now that I let fear control me, fear of not being good enough, of not living up to what our families expected." Zoe listened as he went through what was clearly a rehearsed speech. Apology, self-reflection, promise of change. All the right words in all the right order. "Your father mentioned you've been struggling since the wedding was called off," Andy said, reaching across the table. "I want you to know I never meant to hurt you like that." "Struggling?" Zoe pulled her hand back. "I haven't been struggling, Andy. I've been thriving. I got a promotion. I led the affordable housing initiative that got approved by city council. I bought new furniture. I'm fine." Something flickered across his face. Irritation? Surprise? "Well, that's great," he said, his tone shifting slightly. "But Zoe, we both know you're not getting any older, and frankly, the options at our level get slimmer every year. I'm offering us a second chance here." There it was, the mask slipping. "A second chance?" Zoe's voice was dangerously quiet. "You're offering me a second chance?" "I'm saying we could make this work," Andy pressed. "Your father thinks so, my father thinks so. We have history, compatibility. We could get married next summer, small ceremony this time, nothing elaborate." Zoe started to stand, but Andy reached across the table and grabbed her wrist, not hard enough to hurt, but firm enough to make her freeze. "Don't make a scene," he hissed. "You owe me this conversation, after everything our families have invested." "Excuse me?" The voice came from behind Andy, male, calm, with an edge that suggested this was not a request. Wei Chen had been watching the whole interaction from his position at the bar. He'd seen the woman's body language shift from uncomfortable to trapped. He'd seen the man grab her wrist, and he'd made a decision. "Is there a problem here?" Wei asked, looking directly at Andy. Andy released Zoe's wrist. "This is a private conversation." It didn't look private. It looked like the lady was trying to leave. He turned to Zoe. "Ma'am, are you all right?" Zoe looked up at this stranger, Asian man in his early 30s, expensive suit, wire-rimmed glasses, and an expression that suggested he did not back down from confrontation. "I'm fine," she started to say automatically, then stopped. Was I fine? Was any of this fine? "Actually," Zoe said, her voice stronger now, "I was just leaving." "Zoe, don't be dramatic," Andy began. "I think the lady's made her position clear," Wei interrupted. He hadn't moved, but his presence seemed to take up more space. The restaurant had gone quiet. Other diners were watching now. Andy's face was red, jaw tight. "Do you know who I am?" Andy said. "I'm a federal prosecutor." "I'm a partner at Chen & Associates," Wei replied smoothly. "We handle a lot of federal cases. So yes, I'm familiar with how prosecutors should conduct themselves. This is not it." Zoe grabbed her purse and stood. Her legs felt shaky, but she was moving. Wei stepped aside to give her space. "Thank you," she said quietly as she passed him. "Wait," Wei called after her. She stopped. "This might be forward, but would you like some company? There's a coffee shop 2 blocks away, public, safe, and they make excellent cappuccinos." Zoe looked back at Andy, still sitting in the booth, then at this stranger who'd just intervened on her behalf. "Coffee sounds perfect," she said. They walked to Intelligentsia in silence, the cold November air clearing Zoe's head. Wei ordered 2 cappuccinos and found them a quiet corner table. "I'm Wei," he said, extending his hand. "Zoe," she shook it. "And thank you, you didn't have to do that." My little sister, Wei said simply. She was in a relationship where the guy wouldn't respect her boundaries. Started small, like that, a hand on the wrist saying she was being dramatic. By the end, he'd isolated her from everyone who cared about her. So yeah, I had to do it.
Is she okay now? She is. Took a while, but she got out. She's in grad school now. They sat in silence for a moment. Then Zoe started laughing. The slightly unhinged laughter that comes when absurdity reaches critical mass. My dad set that up, she said. That whole dinner. My ex-fiancé who called off our wedding. My dad wants us to get back together because it would be good for family connections. Your father sounds like mine, Wei said. My dad's been trying to set me up with the daughter of his business partner for 3 years. Never mind that she's not interested and neither am I. It's about the alliance. So what do you do? Wei shrugged. I moved to Chicago, started my own practice separate from the family firm in New York, created boundaries. It took years and a lot of uncomfortable conversations, but we're getting there. They talked for 2 hours. Wei told her about his work in civil rights law. Zoe told him about her work in community development, about the pressure to marry appropriately, about the exhaustion of always being her father's daughter instead of herself. Can I tell you something? Wei said as they walked out into the cold. You handled that situation with a lot of grace. A lot of people would have just stayed in that booth. I almost did, admitted Zoe. Years of training to be polite, to respect my elders and honor my family, hard to unlearn. But you're doing it, Wei said. That's what matters. He handed her his card. If you ever need legal advice or just someone who understands family pressure, call me. Zoe looked at the card. Wei Chen, partner of Chen and Associates. The phone calls from her father started that night. Zoe let them go to voicemail. She listened to them the next morning over coffee. Zoe, Andy called me very upset. He said some stranger harassed him and you left without explanation. Call me back. Then, Zoe, Judge Morrison called. This is embarrassing for both our families. You need to apologize to Andy. Finally, Zoe Grace Okonkwo, you will call me back today. This behavior is unacceptable. Zoe deleted them all. Then she texted her sister, Emma. We need to talk. They met at Emma's apartment while her husband took their daughter to the park. Zoe told her everything. The dinner, Andy's words, Wei's intervention. Dad is going to lose his mind, Emma said, but she was smiling. I'm proud of you, though. I sat through so many terrible dates before I met David because Dad was keen on building connections. You know this, I met David at a coffee shop. A teacher, not a lawyer or doctor or businessman. Dad was horrified. But I realized that his disappointment was going to be temporary, and this was my life, which I would very much like to be the captain of. Zoe thought about that as she drove home. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Hi Zoe, this is Wei. I got your number from the reservation system at Gibson's. Attorney privileges, don't ask. I wanted to make sure you got home safely and that you're doing okay. No pressure to respond. Zoe stared at the message. Then she typed back, I'm okay. Thank you again for last night. You didn't have to do that. Wei's response came quickly. Actually, I did. But if you want to thank me properly, there's an Ethiopian restaurant in Edgewater I've been wanting to try. Are you free Saturday? Zoe smiled at her phone. I love Ethiopian food. What time? That Saturday dinner turned into Sunday brunch. Sunday brunch turned into Wednesday coffee. By the end of the month, they'd fallen into an easy rhythm. Texts throughout the day, dinners twice a week, long conversations about everything and nothing. Wei was different from anyone Zoe had dated. He listened more than he spoke. He asked about her work and remembered the details. He never tried to solve her problems unless she asked. He just held space for her to figure things out herself. My parents are coming to Chicago next week, Wei mentioned over dinner one night. They want to meet you. Zoe nearly choked on her wine. We've been dating for 6 weeks. I know, but I also know that I'm serious about you, and I don't want to waste time playing games. If this is going to be complicated with our families, and it will, I'd rather deal with it head-on. But before Zoe could meet Wei's parents, she got a call that threatened the current peace she was experiencing. It was her brother, Christopher, calling from Atlanta. Zoe, Dad had a heart attack. He's at Northwestern Memorial Hospital. You need to come now." The world tilted. Zoe grabbed her keys, her hands shaking so badly she could barely lock her apartment door. Wei picked her up in 15 minutes. "You shouldn't drive like this," he said when she protested. "Let me help." At the hospital, her family was gathered in the cardiac ICU waiting room. Her mother, Grace, looked 10 years older. Emma was crying. Her brothers stood like sentries trying to hold everyone together. "He's stable," the doctor told them. "Moderate heart attack. He'll need surgery, but the prognosis is good if he makes lifestyle changes." Zoe sat by her father's bedside that night, watching his chest rise and fall. Kevin Okonkwo, the man who'd seemed almighty her entire life, looked fragile under the hospital blankets. "I'm sorry, Dad," she whispered. "I know I've disappointed you." His eyes opened slowly. "Zoe, I'm here." Zoe was cleaning tears she didn't realize had fallen. "I wanted you settled because I was afraid," he said. "After your mother's cancer scare 5 years ago, I became obsessed with making sure everything was in order, making sure you kids would be okay. But I confused control with care." Zoe held his hand. "You were trying to protect me." "I was trying to protect myself," her dad corrected, "from the fear of leaving you alone. But you're not alone, are you? Even without Andy, even without my plans, you have people who care about you." "I do," Zoe said, thinking of Wei in the waiting room, staying despite never meeting her family. "Bring him in," her father said. "The young man who's been sitting out there for hours. I want to meet him." Wei came in quietly, respectfully. He shook Mr. Kevin's hand gently. Her dad studied him with sharp eyes that missed nothing. "Chinese?" "Chinese-American," Wei confirmed. "My parents immigrated from Shanghai in the 80s. "And what do you do, Mr. Chen, sir?" "Wei Chen," he provided. "And I am an attorney, civil rights and family law. I run my own practice." "Your own practice?" Kevin's eyebrows rose. "I started my career at my family's corporate firm in New York, but I wanted to do something on my own, so I moved here and started fresh." Kevin was quiet for a long moment. Then he smiled. "That takes courage." Over the next 2 weeks, as Kevin recovered, something shifted in the Okonkwo family dynamics. Grace sat Zoe down one afternoon in the hospital cafeteria. "Your father and I have been talking," she said, "about a lot of things, especially how we've been putting our fears onto you kids. We confused protection with control." "Mom, let me finish, baby. We want you to be happy. If this Wei guy makes you happy, we would love to know him." "It's still early," Zoe said carefully. "We've only been dating for 2 months. Your father proposed to me after 4 weeks. His family thought he was crazy. I was just a nursing student. Funny how we forget our own stories." The dinner with Wei's parents happened at an upscale Chinese restaurant in Chinatown. Zoe wore a burgundy dress and her grandmother's jade bracelet. She was nervous, but Wei's hand found her under the table. His parents, Richard and Wei Chen, were polite but reserved at first. Wei asked about Zoe's work, her education, her family. All very proper, very careful. Then Wei asked, "What does your father do, Zoe?" "He's a real estate developer," Zoe said. "Commercial properties, mostly in the South Side. He's been building in Black communities for 30 years, creating opportunities where banks wouldn't invest." Richard's expression changed. "Kevin Okonkwo? The Bronzeville Project? You know my father's work?" "Know it? I've studied it. His model for community-centered development is brilliant. I lectured about it in my urban planning class at UIC last semester." The evening warmed after that. As they left the restaurant, Wei pulled Zoe aside. "My son is difficult," she said in accented English. "Very stubborn, very idealistic. His father and I wanted him to take over the family business, but he chose his own path. He told me," Zoe said. "When Wei told us about you, I was worried. Not because you're not Chinese, but because he's my baby and I want him happy. But watching you two together, you understand each other."
6 months later, Zoe and Wei were planning a community legal clinic together, combining her nonprofit work with his legal expertise to provide free services in underserved neighborhoods. They were in her apartment, surrounded by grant proposals and floor plans, when Wei suddenly got quiet. "I have something I need to tell you," he said. Zoe's stomach dropped. "Okay. My firm got an offer, a big one. A civil rights case that could set precedent nationally, but it requires me to move to DC for at least a year, maybe 2. The room felt too small suddenly. DC, Zoe repeated. "I'm not taking it," Wei said quickly. "I wanted to tell you about it because it's a huge opportunity, and I'm turning it down because we have our lives fixed here. I don't want to mess things up." "Wait," Zoe said. "What kind of case?" Wei explained. "A class action lawsuit about housing discrimination that could affect millions of families." "You have to take it," Zoe said. "No, Zoe, listen to me. Don't turn down your dream because you're afraid." "I'm not afraid," Wei said. "I'm choosing us." "What if," Zoe said slowly, "we could do both? My organization has been talking about opening a DC office. I could propose leading that expansion. It's a promotion, and it would let us both pursue our work. You'd move to DC? For me?" "Not just for you," Zoe corrected, "for the work." They moved to DC that fall. Wei took the civil rights case. Zoe launched the DC branch of her nonprofit. They found an apartment in Shaw with exposed brick and windows that caught the morning light. It wasn't always easy. The case consumed Wei's time. Zoe's new office came with staffing challenges and budget fights. They had arguments about dishes and whose turn it was to grocery shop. But they also had Sunday mornings at Eastern Market, late-night strategy sessions where Zoe's community development expertise helped Wei understand the human impact of his cases. They FaceTime with both families. One day, while they were walking along the National Mall after a particularly brutal day, Wei had just won a major motion in his case, but Zoe had lost funding for a key program. "I've been thinking," Wei said, stopping by the Lincoln Memorial, "about what partnership means." "Okay," Zoe said, confused by the sudden shift. "We've built this life where we're both pursuing what matters to us, but we're doing it together, supporting each other's dreams instead of competing. I don't want that to ever change." He pulled a small box from his jacket pocket. Inside was a simple gold band with 3 small stones: sapphire, emerald, and diamond. "Zoe Okonkwo, will you build the rest of this life with me?" Zoe was crying and laughing simultaneously. Yes, yes, absolutely yes. They called their families that night. Mr. Kevin, now fully recovered, answered on the first ring. "Dad," Zoe said, "Wei asked me to marry him." There was a pause. Then, "Did you say yes?" "I did." "Good. That young man has excellent judgment. When's the wedding? Your mother will want to start planning immediately." "Actually," Zoe said, "Wei and I want to keep it small. Family and close friends, maybe in Chicago." "Whatever makes you happy, daughter. That's all we want." Have you ever had to choose between family expectations and your own truth? Share your story in the comments. We will read every single one. If Zoe and Wei's journey resonated with you, hit that like button and subscribe.